Hi and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a long overdue macrame project. So go ahead and light a candle, take some sips of coffee, and let's get started. For this project, I'm actually using 4 different colors of macrame cord. I'll go ahead and link the cord I'm using down in the description below. But what we're going to do first is do our lark's head knot to attach all of our cords. We're just going to put them in half, loop them over, and pull the cords through. And this is how we're attaching all of our white strands here. So right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and add another color, and how we're going to do this is we're going to take those first 4 strands, and with whatever color you want to use first, you're going to put it behind those 4 strands, and then you're going to attach it with a square knot. So your left strand's going to go over, and your right strand's going to go over, under, and through. Now, when you do tighten this, make sure you don't pull too tightly like I do here. You really want your knot to just hug those 4 strands, not necessarily pinch them together. But then when you do that, you're going to push it all the way up and then finish your square knot by doing the opposite. So your right will go over and your left will go over, under, and through, and that completes your square knot. Now you're just going to continue with square knots all the way down to kind of create a line of black. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and attach the next 2 colors. So we're going to take this orange and we're going to attach it to the next 4 strands. And we're going to do this, of course, with the square knot again. So you're going to put your orange behind the 4 strands and then do your square knot. So your left goes over and your right goes over, under, and through. Then you're going to go ahead and tighten this and then push it all the way up to the top and finish off your square knot with your right going over and your left going over, under, and through, and then just continuing this down to create a line of orange. We're then going to go ahead and create a line of gray with our next 4 strands. So now we're going to go ahead and add a 5th color to this piece. Now I ran out of the white cord that I used to attach to the dowel, but I had this cream color cord left over. Now it is a bigger millimeter than my other cording, but I actually loved the way that this turned out. I think it adds a little bit more texture to the piece, but let me know in the comments below if you agree or if you'd rather all your cord be more uniform across the board. But I do like the way that it turned out. Now just keep in mind, if you do use a bigger macrame cord, what you're going to do is you're not going to need as many square knots to get the length that you want. So just kind of keep that in mind. But what we're going to do is really kind of eyeball it and kind of create a wave pattern with these rows or lines of color. So here you can kind of see the wave pattern going and how I got it. I did tighten this up a little bit later on, but we're just going to go ahead and continue it on down, adding more color as we go. And here it is a little bit more cleaned up. So again, you can kind of see the wave pattern I'm going with. But what you're going to want to do is actually start with the cord that you're going to want the shortest. So whatever color, wherever that might be on your piece, and then kind of go from there. So as you go further down, you're going to want to increase the square knots. As you go further up, you'll want to decrease the square knots. And keep in mind, again, if you're using a different size millimeter cord, to just kind of eyeball it. And the next thing we're going to do is kind of do a line of the double half hitch to kind of complete this section of the piece. Now, I always add another cord for this just because I like the way it looks better on my piece. But what you're going to do is take that added cord and you're going to take the first strand hanging from that very first section of square knots and place it over, under, and kind of through, as you can see here. And then you pull that tight, and then you just repeat that. You do that again. So that's the double half hitch. You put it over the cord that you're adding, and then you're going to put it under and pull it through. And then this kind of creates the double half hitch. Now it can be tricky to kind of get this started with a new cord. So understand if you have any difficulty with it, it takes a little bit of time. But once you get it attached properly with that very first cord, from there with the next cords, it becomes very easy to just kind of create this perfectly straight, or as we're going to do, kind of waved line across your piece. So to continue, you're going to take the strands from that next line of square knots to continue on with your double half hitch. Now this is basically attaching all these lines of square knots or lines of color together. Now I do have a pro tip for you. If you feel like your double half hitch is kind of squeezing these lines of square knots together a little too much, you can go ahead and just add in another knot. Now technically it won't be a double half hitch because there'll be a third knot in there, but what this does is it just gives you that extra spacing if needed. Next, what we're going to do is add another line of the double half hitch. Now again, getting this started is always the trickiest part. You just want to make sure you're really careful when you're adding on that first knot. So this knot is going to be basically your anchor. You want to make sure that it's tight. You want to make sure it's exactly where it is you want it to be. And then from there, again, as you keep adding more knots, it really does get easier to kind of create the line you want. Now with this project, we're creating more of a wave, which is easier. You don't have to create the perfect straight line all the way across, which again is hard to do, especially when you're adding a line of double half hitch sort of randomly in your project. You know, it's not attached to the square knots or next to the square knots to kind of create the line for you as well. So again, it is a little bit difficult, but once you get it started, it gets so much easier. So just don't give up if you start to struggle at this step. And again, we're going to do another row of the double half hitch. So between the two rows, we're actually going to weave in a line of black cording. So I looked up several different ways to weave in your cord, And this was ultimately the one I decided to go with. So you can kind of see here, but what I'm doing is I'm wrapping it around 2 cords every 4 cords in basically. But what you're going to do when you're doing this is you're going to cross it over 6 cords and then wrap it around the 2. So cross it over 6, wrap it around the 2, cross it over 6, wrap it around the 2, and just kind of continue that pattern all the way across. So once you get to the other side, you're going to want to repeat that pattern in the opposite direction. So how you'll do this at the end is you're going to wrap your cord around those last 6, and again, wrap it kind of loosely. You just want it to hug the cord, not squeeze them too tightly. And then once you get it around those 6, you're then going to wrap it around those same 2 as kind of following the pattern, but this is kind of going to mirror the pattern as well. So again, I'm going to wrap them around those 2, and then from there I'm going to cross them over and wrap them around the next 2, and then after that it'll continue to be over 6 around 2, over 6 around 2, just as we did before, but you're going to do it all the way back across. Now I'm going to repeat this weaving pattern, this time at the bottom of this section. So again, what I'm going to do is wrap it around 2 cords every 4 cords in. So you can kind of see again how I'm getting this started. And then after that, it's basically going to be over 6 around 2, over 6 around 2, all the way across. Now keep in mind, because this is at the bottom, it is slightly different. When you're wrapping it around the 2, you're going to be wrapping it on top instead of underneath, if you can kind of tell. But again, we're going to just continue this pattern all the way across. And then again, when you get to the other side, you're going to wrap the cord around those last 6 strands, and then again around the 2. So again, what you're doing is you're mirroring kind of the pattern that you just did. So again, though, once you get that first wrap around, it's essentially just over 6 around 2, over 6 around 2, all the way down on the other side. And once the weaving is done, we're then going to create another line of the double half hitch to finish off this last section of pattern. And then we're going to go ahead and do more lines of color going all the way down. So when I did this, I followed the exact same color pattern that I did at the top, and that way it was kind of a mirror image. So here you can see it all kind of finished off to make another wavy pattern just to kind of finish off this section. And then of course we're going to do another row of double half hitch just to kind of complete that section of color. And lastly, we're going to go ahead and add some fringe. So here I'm going to add some black fringe underneath the black weaving. So for this, what I'm going to do is essentially just take the 2 ends of your cord and put them through in between 2 cords on the hanging. So you can kind of see me doing this sort of the hard way here. Later on, I kind of have a better technique on how to add these, but this just kind of adds some fringe to your design. Now, this entire design is inspired by other macrame artists, I love this design. I wanted to try it. It's not entirely mine though, of course, but you know, if you like a design, go ahead and try it. I improvised. I kind of figured out how to do it just with my own knowledge of macrame. And then, of course, I improvised where needed and changed things around. I looked up things if I didn't know how to do them. You just kind of have to play around with it. So here I did a little bit better at adding the cord in. I took the two ends right off the bat and just kind of wrapped them in the middle and then pulled it up. And this was a much easier way to add on that fringe. But what we're going to do is do another row of fringe here with the cream color, and then we're going to push the black back up. And this again is just following along this pattern from other artists that I've seen, and I just loved the look of this. I do want to try this exact or similar pattern again using bigger macrame cord, so a bigger millimeter macrame cord. I think that will allow me to have even better lines, like my lines will be more crisp, more straight, exactly how I want them, and kind of perfect the perfectionism in it. So for my next coming projects, I plan to use a thicker macrame cord, so probably a 6 millimeter instead of 3 millimeter that I typically use, and we'll see. I'm hoping that will create more perfect lines for all of my projects. But I hope you guys were inspired by this design today. Again, I get my inspiration from other artists, things I've seen on Pinterest, Instagram, Etsy, all different things. So just take your inspiration where you can get it. And if you can't figure something out, just look it up. Also, of course, improvise where needed, and maybe you'll create something that's totally your own. You never know. But what we're going to do here is finish off adding this fringe. We're going to add a whole nother section of fringe, and then we're going to cut off all of this remaining cord. So to show you how I'm going to tie off and cut the excess cord, I'm going to go ahead and flip this project around so that you can see how I kind of end it or finish it off. Now it's pretty simple. I basically just tie my cords together and cut them with a little bit of excess just to hopefully prevent anything from unraveling. Now let me know in the comments below if you've seen a better way to kind of finish off your project, whether it's weaving the cords in somehow or anything like that. Now, this is how I do it. Typically, again, it's going to hang on a wall and not really be touched too much. So most of the time, it's not going to unravel. But let me know if you have any tips or tricks that you know of to keep it from unraveling. Now for the ends of the weaving, I did just kind of tie those off and then again cut with a little bit of excess, the same as I did with the ends of the double half hitch, so kind of just continuing with that same pattern. And lastly, I'm going to go ahead and cut all of the fringe. I hope you guys liked this one and enjoyed seeing me work on another macrame project. I hope there'll be more to come with this following year. And again, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you liked it, click that like button. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more macrame videos. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.